Good morning. This is Shoshana Burgett at Color Karma. I am here again with Ryan Stanley, Senior Director of Color, PVH. Hey there,
Hello.
buddy. I have Joe Zach, Color Material Manager at KUIU.
Hello.
You're located where on the West Coast?
Currently, I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Welcome aboard. And I have Goor Moshe from Israel. Pronounce that again?
Petach Tikva.
And where
Yeah.
exactly is that in Israel?
It's about 20 minutes from Tel Aviv. Yeah, it's one of the big cities in the central area.
Very nice. You must have much better weather than we have in the East Coast right now.
Yeah, right now 24 degrees C, I should say.
So welcome aboard, guys.
Yeah.
We wanted to bring somebody on board like Goor to talk about Twine, because we talk about color and development and new technologies that can enable designers to design quicker and innovate quicker. So Goor, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about the device behind you?
Yeah, I thought I'd wheel it in and just to kind of give a sense of the size of it. So yeah, Twine we've developed a digital thread dyeing technology. We take white or raw polyester thread or yarn and dye it digitally in the color of your choice. And it's ready, it's for dyeing on demand, ready for immediate use. And perfect, this particular, it's called a TS 1800, our first product. It's we started small scale, so looking at the product development, sampling, and low volume production capabilities.
So what you have there is really something quite small, almost like an big office printer. But
Yeah.
that way, instead of ordering from overseas or from your supplier, you can then quickly kind of produce twine, threads on demand in various colors for sampling. Ryan, how would that impact like some of your innovation teams inside PVH?
Speed to market right away. So yeah, I have a couple of questions, or we can talk through it. But I think being able to access colors on the fly is huge. Instead of having to sit through canned samples, canned swatches from typical sewing and embroidery thread companies, where you would potentially have to keep however much on hand for inventory. The idea of being able to print what you want, when you want, where you want is just dynamic, and especially needed in today's environment.
I mean, I come from a print on demand, so it is exciting to see all this on demand manufacturing. And usually you see that kind of technology at a supplier even, but the size of the device can go right inside a brand for your, not even just sampling, but innovation, throwing threads up and saying, on this jacket, do I want it to be yellow or pink or rose or whatever it is? And you can just quickly throw that together and physically see that and compare them very quickly. That's great. I mean, Joe, how would that help you at your design and your color material role?
Just like Ryan has said, like on demand, but mostly the impact I see here from not just me and my design team is most likely the sustainability portion of it, where you're not ordering so much yarn to knit or weave into whatever fabric you want. You can get a small MOQ and kind of like prevent, especially for sampling or development, producing so many yards of color and having to waste that without using it, because when you go to bulk production, you don't have you're probably not going to use that color because you didn't like it for some reason.
Depending upon adoption.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Goor, when suppliers, do you have any idea what the normal, volume a supplier might order of thread?
So obviously it's application dependent. If you're dealing with, especially in a place like Europe or the US, when you've got sewing thread, they're having to order boxes. So boxes usually has about 50 kilometers worth of thread in there, 10
Right.
spools of 5-kilometer cones. So, a cone like this, which is, I mean, this system dyed it. Yeah, you're holding 1,000 meters. This is about, what you'd get. There's about 3,000 meters.
Right.
And normally that's even thicker, right? So it'll be a 5 kilometer spools. And so they'll order 50 kilometers for knitting yarn, let's say for logos of socks, if they need to order just for that 0.6 grams or 60 grams worth or 100 grams worth, they'll order a kilo, sometimes up to 5 kilos. Depends which, and also which territory you're in. So Europe and the US have larger MOQs generally. And usually it takes on average 2 weeks to deliver. So yeah, and what we say is basically produce as much as you need. So literally you could start off just creating cards of color, just to do your tests. So here we've got, well, I don't know, 20 meters worth. Decide on your color, measure your color. If you're happy, then you produce for your samples whatever you need.
And to your point, you have 20 meters right there. You measure it, which is, Ryan, Joe, you would have those devices right there in your facility.
I was about to ask, yeah.
Absolutely. Measure it. Make sure it meets the standards that you have, that the suppliers can have. But from sustainability, it's not just even the volume, right? We're talking the volume. I mean, 50 kilometers down to 20 meters, right? That's enormous volume that you're saving. But time, 2 weeks at best, because everyone's having not the best delivery times with the postal system in general. And additionally, flying, trucks, airplanes, packaging, all of that has to be considered when you talk about sustainability, right? Yeah. All of the carbon footprint there as well.
Yeah. You can receive QTXs, right? QTXs or miscellaneous colorimetric information like RGB or CMYK values, et cetera, that you convert.
Yeah. So we can receive within the QTX, you always have the LAB value, the RGB equivalent. And so LAB and RGB is the two,
color spaces you work in.
LAB obviously preferable because it's more correct. And so, it is that much quicker in terms of what we do. Our system works in the CMYK based, but it's our CMYK, it's Twine CMYK, so it has no real relationship to print. It's similar.
So you've created your own ICC profile, or?
That's what we're developing. It's something that we'll need to connect to the outside world and start building profiles around it. And so comparing it to print CMYK won't be useful. So what we do is we kind of emulate LAB color space, emulate the RGB color space, and compute accordingly using our CMYK. So we're emulating those spaces in the background in our algorithms.
See, that's what's intriguing for me, being able to, as we move more toward digital color only, right? So partnering with execution companies, partnering with global dye and chemical companies, partnering with, third-party partners for dye combinability, being able to digitally, virtually display color accurately on screen for designers, have them be comfortable with that color on screen. But when it comes time to actually getting the color, now what do we do with that match prediction, that random color that we've come up with that we know is achievable on our material? But how do we get it to the point where when we do want to give people samples, how do we show it to them? Like when we do finally get into the physical world, being able to just take that QTX and provide it. That's what's keen to me.
Yeah.
So if I understand though, LAB is absolutely the preferred color choice of color language, but you do support RGB as well.
Yeah.
So
RGB just simply because I think because it's the easy thing to do, right? I mean, you've got a digital screen, you've got this, you can see the touch screen on the system itself. It's an RGB, so it's something that is easily accessible. Maybe connecting to, if anything that's video or screen oriented.
Absolutely.
So, but in terms of actually dealing with color correctly, we don't recommend.
Yeah. So that way you're going straight from a 3 to 4. But for those who understand how CMYK works, it's not going to be the same color gamut as people experience when they're on a printing press or even a digital printing press that is toner based, right? You are different technology. So, that CMYK is going to have a very distinctly different color gamut or color range than other types of CMYK devices on the market.
Yeah. And it's very dependent on the material. More so, I don't actually hear you can correct me, Shoshana, or not, but I just, the amount of different kind of yarns and threads out there, they affect the gamut in their way.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but maybe it's the same as matte paper versus a glossy paper, I guess.
It is. It always comes down to the pigments, the material, and the technology. Those are the three stools of the leg that kind of control the color gamut. We talk about spectral data, but that's kind of a big word for a lot of people. We kind of try and communicate in very different avenues for the different audiences. But when we talk about spectral data, that's the DNA of that color. That holds all the information, and that's really the rich data. But LAB is going to be a good, solid, accurate color to start with and communicate that into the machine. Joe, would that fit in your office?
No, it actually would not.
How would you use the Twine device in either color and development or even sampling or innovation?
I most likely would use it mainly to see how in just small runs how the colors would look in pretty much full garment form. So like whenever we want to see a full run of what these colors look like,
right,
we go and run these small production runs just to see how it looks in garment form.
Or like in the sampling lab.
right.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah. So put it in the sampling lab. That's actually a good point, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
curiously.
So, yeah, I mean,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
okay, so I mean, like that's the question, is whether if you're a brand, you have your own sample room. You can't be. I assume you can't be. Satisfied with a virtual sample. You have to feel it. You have to know it, see it for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Totally.
Ryan, you were going to say something?
No, that's exactly, you read my mind. That's exactly where I was going to go. I think the challenge today as, post-COVID world, a lot of people are pulled away from the offices, pulled away from their normal environments.
Yep.
One, having something like that, is a reasonably small footprint, can be put in an area, maybe not for every designer if they're pulled away, but, for a key decision maker. But in a sampling lab, again, I like the idea of this dance between the physical world, the analog world, and the digital world, and being able to execute what you want when you want without having to sit on inventories, wait on traditional sewing and embroidery companies to provide you samples from whatever their book is, and more importantly, to that point, not having to sort of like funnel yourself into a normal selection of colors, being able to just say, okay, here's the QTX, under whatever illuminance the brand would otherwise specify. And I did have a question on that. And then get what you want, like without having to deal with anything else.
Yeah.
But to that point, you said LAB space, the illuminant, D65, D50.
So we currently were focused on D65 as our first tests. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mainly because of the industry, the way it works, mostly, but also because of our strategic partner and investor, Coates, the thread supplier.
Nice.
One of the leading names, of course, and they have one of our systems in their Turkish facility. And the idea is that they're testing it D65 to begin with. Of course, they're looking at the other illuminants, and the goal is to be able to read the Twine recipe and go to bulk dyeing directly. So like you said, to treat the color as a digital code, to read that code, and to be able to go to the analog way of dyeing it without having to do a second sampling stage, essentially. So it's something that we're working together in the background, and illuminants are part of it, and including the white point. So, whether or not you want to do it using a raw thread, or do you want to do it using a brightened, white bleach thread? It's something that we're developing in the background with them, and so it's starting. I mean, we're starting to see some good results in terms of the accuracy levels that they're getting with their system over there.
Do you have any partnerships with larger mills and vendors? Because I would think the very next step would be adoption, right? Like if a designer does like it in the sampling lab, it gets rolled into larger scale production. I'm not sure. I'll just ask the question. How would you then partner with the mill or vendor then to scale this? So here's a color I like. We found it. Now we want it. Now we want to go with it.
Yeah. So with coats, of course, that's gonna be that's good. The first one that's
a
gonna
big partner to have.
Right.
So coats, and of course they've got their sewing threads, their Epic, which is a very, very popular thread. They've got their embroidery thread. So we started with embroidery because that's how Twine started, looking at embroidery industry. And then when we realized we could go to knitting and sewing, we've kind of moved on more towards that. So the Epic thread does really well. And they have their coats knit. So slowly, we're building the library through coats. And then it'll be a similar story with the other supplies. Of course, we have to respect our relationship with coats and how we deal with that. But in time, yes, it's one thing we say to our potential customers and our customers is, it's a possibility. It's something that needs to be developed. We need to connect also to the color libraries. We need to connect to other partners like Data Color and X-Rite and all these, on the like. I think it's all about connecting all the dots, and also connecting to brands and their color data and their color, the way they kind of deal with it. So there's a lot of, basically we want to be part of the standard building. And I think I was trying to kind of look at the network, and it almost, again, there's no real core to it. There's no center to this. I think the brands will see themselves as the center of how they deal with color, but then coats will say, no, we're the center. You have to come through us. And then and then Twine's going to say, well, we're kind of connecting the dots from our end, and it's basically just a network of communication, basically.
Digital communications through the workflow.
Yeah.
So Goor, I appreciate you coming today, and Joe, so happy to have you. And we're going to continue this in our part 2. So we'll continue this with workflow and embroidery in part 2. Thank you very much, Ryan, Goor, and Joe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is Shoshana from Color Karma. Have a wonderful and colorful day.
Bye, guys.
You too. Thanks.